Female CEO said, "I need a fake boyfriend for a day at my ex-wedding." What the single dad said. She was one of the youngest female CEOs in the city, leading a fast-growing company with confidence and sharp focus. Her days were full of meetings, numbers, decisions, and pressure. She wore calm like armor and success like a shield. But when the office lights went off and she returned to her quiet apartment, the silence felt louder than any boardroom debate. That evening, she sat alone on her couch, scrolling through her phone without really seeing anything. Her mind was tired, but her heart was restless. Then a message popped up in the family group chat. It was short, cheerful, and painful all at once. Her ex was getting married. The message included a wedding invitation image, full of soft colors and smiling faces. His name stood out clearly. The same man who once said he loved her ambition. The same man who later said her ambition made him feel small. She stared at the screen for a long time. She did not cry. She did not throw the phone away. She simply felt something tight form in her chest. They had once planned a future together. At least she thought they had. But when her company started growing faster than expected, things changed. He wanted a simpler life. He wanted to be needed more. And slowly, without shouting or drama, they drifted apart. The breakup had been polite, calm, and deeply painful. Now he was moving on, publicly, happily. She told herself it did not matter. She had moved on too, or so she believed. Still, the thought of attending that wedding alone made her stomach turn. She imagined the looks, the whispers, the quiet questions hidden behind polite smiles. Is she still single? She chose work over love. Success, but at what cost? She put the phone down and decided to leave the apartment. She did not want to sit with these thoughts. There was a small cafe near her office that stayed open late. It was quiet, warm, and far from the world that judged her. She grabbed her coat, skipped the mirror, and stepped out into the night. The cafe was half full. Soft music played in the background. The smell of coffee and baked bread filled the air. She chose a corner table and ordered her usual black coffee, no sugar. As she waited, she opened her laptop, pretending to work. In truth, she was just trying to distract herself. At a nearby table, a man sat with a small child. The child was drawing with colored pencils while the man spoke softly on the phone. He looked tired but patient. His voice was calm, not rushed. He apologized more than once during the call, then ended it and turned his attention fully to the child. "Almost done?" he asked gently. The child nodded and smiled. "Can we get a cookie after?" he smiled back. "One cookie, then home." She noticed them without meaning to. Something about the scene felt real and grounding. No performance, no rush. Just two people sharing a simple moment. A few minutes later, the child accidentally dropped the pencils and they rolled toward her table. She bent down to help collect them. "Thank you," the man said, standing up. "Sorry about that." "It's okay," she replied, handing them back. Their eyes met briefly. He had a kind face, not flashy, just honest. They exchanged a polite smile. She returned to her seat. A few minutes passed. Then the man approached her table again. "Sorry to bother you," he said. "Do you mind if we sit here?" The other tables are a bit crowded and she gets distracted. She looked around and nodded. Sure, they sat. The child returned to drawing. For a moment they sat in silence. Then the child pointed at her laptop. "Are you a teacher?" the child asked. She smiled slightly. "No. I run a company." The child nodded seriously as if that made perfect sense and returned to drawing. The man chuckled softly. "She thinks everyone with a laptop is a teacher." "That's not a bad rule," she said. They talked a little after that. Simple things, work, weather. The cafe, nothing personal at first. She did not mention who she was. He did not ask. She liked that. Eventually, the child grew sleepy. The man packed up the pencils and helped her into her jacket. "She's my daughter," he said, almost as an explanation. "She's lovely," she replied. "Thanks," he hesitated. "I'm a single dad," she nodded, not out of pity but understanding. "That can't be easy." "It isn't," he said honestly, "but it's worth it." The child waved goodbye as they stood up to leave. The man paused. "It was nice talking to you." "Likewise," she said. They left. She watched them go, feeling something warm she could not name. When they were gone, she realized her coffee had gone cold. She closed her laptop and stared at the empty chair across from her. On impulse, she packed up and left too. Outside, the air was cool. She walked slowly toward the parking lot. She heard footsteps behind her. "Hey," a voice called out. She turned. It was him holding his car keys. "I hope this isn't strange," he said, slightly awkward. "But you looked like you were carrying the weight of the world in there." She almost laughed. "Did I?" "A little," he said. "I just wanted to say whatever it is, it passes. Most things do." She looked at him, surprised by his honesty. Something in her softened. "My ex is getting married," she said suddenly. The words came out before she could stop them. He nodded slowly. "That explains the weight." "I have to attend the wedding," she continued, "and I don't want to go alone." He did not interrupt. She sighed, then shook her head. "This is ridiculous. I'm sorry. I don't even know you." "It's okay," he said. "Sometimes strangers are easier." She looked at him, thinking. Then she said the words that had been circling her mind since the message arrived. "I need a fake boyfriend, just for one day." "At my ex's wedding." The sentence hung between them in the cold air. He blinked, then laughed, not unkindly but in disbelief. "You're serious?" "I am," she said. "I know it sounds strange. I don't need anything more than company. Just someone to stand next to me so I don't feel exposed." He studied her face, not her clothes, not her posture, her eyes. "I'm not someone who pretends easily," he said carefully. "I wouldn't ask if it didn't matter," she replied. "And I would respect your boundaries." "Completely." He looked down at his car keys, then back at her. His daughter was already asleep in the back seat. His life was simple, fragile, carefully balanced. "I don't give quick answers," he said. "That's fair," she replied. They stood there for a moment, two strangers connected by unexpected honesty. She did not know what he would say. She only knew that asking had already changed something inside her. For the first time since reading that message, she felt less alone. And for him, the question stirred something he had not felt in a long time. The possibility that one day could change more than just appearances. He did not give her an answer that night. After a long pause, he simply nodded once and said, "Let me think about it." His voice was calm, but his eyes showed that he was serious. She respected that. She did not push. They exchanged phone numbers, more out of politeness than expectation, and then went their separate ways. On the drive home, he kept replaying the conversation in his mind. The city lights passed by, but his thoughts stayed with the woman from the cafe. She was confident yet clearly tired, strong yet carrying a quiet ache. He was used to handling responsibility, not sudden requests that could shake his careful routine. His life revolved around work, his daughter, and keeping things steady. There was little space for surprises. When he reached home, he carried his sleeping daughter inside, tucked her into bed, and sat beside her for a while, listening to her slow breathing. Moments like this reminded him why he avoided complications. He had lost once before, and rebuilding had taken years. Pretending to be someone's partner, even for one day, felt like opening a door he had closed long ago. Yet, he could not ignore something else, the honesty in her voice. She had not asked him to lie about who he was. She had not tried to impress him with her status. She had simply asked for help. The next morning she woke early as usual. Her phone lay silent on the bedside table. She told herself not to expect anything. She threw herself into work, moving from one meeting to another, giving instructions, reviewing plans, solving problems. Everyone saw the capable leader they always saw. No one noticed how often her thoughts drifted back to the cafe. During lunch, her assistant mentioned the wedding again, asking if she planned to attend. She answered with a calm yes and changed the subject. Inside, the pressure returned. Going alone felt unbearable. Not because she still loved her ex, but because she hated the idea of being judged through the lens of her past. That evening, as she was about to leave the office, her phone buzzed. It was his name. "I've been thinking," the message read. "Can we talk?" She stared at the screen for a second, then typed back, "Of course." They agreed to meet at the same cafe the next night. When she arrived, he was already there, sitting in the same corner, this time alone. She felt oddly relieved. They ordered coffee and sat quietly for a moment. Then he spoke. "I don't usually do things like this," he said. "My life is very structured." "I understand," she replied. "I have a daughter," he continued. "Everything I do has to make sense for her too." "I respect that," she said. "She would never be involved. This is just one event." He nodded. "That's why I'm considering it. You were honest with me, and I know what it feels like to be looked at as if something is missing." She did not interrupt. "I'll do it," he said finally, "but I need to be clear about a few things." She let out a breath she did not realize she was holding. "Of course. We don't lie about big things," he said. "We don't insult anyone. We don't try to prove anything. We just show up together." "That's exactly what I want," she said. "No drama. And after the wedding," he added, "we go back to our lives." She nodded. "Agreed." They both smiled slightly, not in excitement but in mutual understanding. Over the next few days, they met briefly to talk through details. Nothing complicated. Where the wedding was, what time it started, how they would introduce each other. She learned that he worked in project management for a mid-sized company. He learned that she had built her business from nothing, starting in a small rented office. Their conversations were easy, natural. Sometimes they talked about work. Sometimes about parenting, even though she did not have children. Sometimes about nothing at all. She noticed how grounded he was. He listened carefully. He did not rush to speak. He never tried to impress her. It felt refreshing. He noticed how different she was from the image people probably had of her. She was thoughtful, curious, sometimes unsure. She asked about his daughter with genuine interest. She laughed easily when he made quiet jokes. As the wedding day approached, something shifted. The arrangement was still clear in their minds, but the space between them felt more comfortable, less formal, more human. On the morning of the wedding, she stood in front of her mirror, adjusting her outfit. She chose something simple but elegant, not to show success, but confidence. She reminded herself that she was not going there to compete with anyone. She was going to close a chapter. He arrived on time. When she opened the door and saw him standing there, dressed neatly but simply, she felt a strange calm, not excitement, just steadiness. "You ready?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "Thank you again." "Let's go," he replied. During the drive, they talked lightly. Music played softly. When they arrived at the venue, she felt her chest tighten. He noticed and said quietly, "You're not alone." That was all he said. It was enough. Inside, familiar faces turned to look at her. Some smiled, some whispered. She held her head high. He stood beside her, relaxed, respectful. When someone asked who he was, she introduced him without hesitation. He smiled, shook hands, and spoke kindly. Her ex noticed them. His expression changed just slightly. Not anger, surprise. She did not feel satisfaction from it. She felt relief. As the ceremony began, she realized something important. She was not there to prove anything. She was there to move forward. And the man beside her was not a shield. He was simply present. When the event ended and they walked back to the car, she felt lighter than she had in months. "Are you okay?" he asked. "Yes," she said honestly. "I really am." They drove back in comfortable silence. When they reached her place, he turned to her. "This is where we stop pretending," he said gently. She smiled. "Yes, thank you for everything," he nodded. "Take care." As he drove away, neither of them knew what the future held. But both knew one thing: what started as a simple favor had changed how they saw themselves. And sometimes, that was enough to open a new door, even if no one stepped through it yet. The wedding day had finally arrived, and with it came a mix of anticipation anxiety, and a strange kind of excitement that neither of them had expected. She had spent the morning carefully preparing, choosing an outfit that was elegant but understated. She didn't want to draw attention to herself, yet she also wanted to feel confident. For hours she had gone through every detail: the dress, the shoes, the hairstyle, even the subtle makeup that made her feel like herself rather than a CEO in a public image. When she arrived at the venue, he was already waiting. He looked calm, collected, and approachable. His presence alone seemed to take the edge off her nerves. There was no pretension in him, no need to impress, no expectation to perform. He simply was, and that alone gave her comfort. "Ready?" he asked, a small, knowing smile on his face. "Yes," she said, feeling a little lighter than she had in days. "Thank you for doing this." "You don't need to thank me," he said. "I'm just here. One day, one role, simple." As they entered the venue, she felt her chest tighten. Faces she had not seen in years turned to look at her. Some smiled politely, others whispered. Her ex's new fiancé looked radiant, happy, and very much in love. She reminded herself to stay composed. She was not here to compete. She was here to face the past without losing herself in it. He walked beside her, calm and reassuring. When introductions were required, she spoke naturally, and he responded with kindness and respect. They shook hands, exchanged smiles, and answered questions without hesitation. People sensed the ease between them. They were together, but there was no false display, just a sense of mutual respect and understanding. Throughout the ceremony, she noticed things she had not before. She noticed how he listened to every word, how he made her feel protected without dominating the space, and how he noticed small gestures, like a nervous fidget or a forced smile, without making a big deal out of it. It struck her that he was not trying to impress anyone. He was simply present in the moment, and that presence was something she had rarely experienced in her own life, where appearances often mattered more than feelings. During the ceremony, her ex looked over once or twice. She could see the flicker of surprise, maybe even regret in his expression. She didn't feel gloating satisfaction. She wasn't there for revenge. Instead, she felt a calm sense of closure. She had moved on, and her life, her choices, and her presence all carried a quiet strength. As the vows were exchanged, she glanced at him. He caught her gaze and offered a small, supportive nod. It was subtle but meaningful. It said without words that he was there for her, not for anyone else, not to judge, not to impress, simply to be a steady presence in an unpredictable moment. She found herself smiling slightly, a genuine smile, not the practiced kind she often wore in meetings or on public stages. After the ceremony, the reception began. Music, laughter, and clinking glasses filled the air. People mingled, danced, and celebrated. She noticed how effortlessly he moved through the crowd, greeting people with genuine warmth and curiosity. He wasn't seeking attention. He wasn't trying to fit in. He simply engaged in ways that were real. She watched him interact with strangers, how he made children smile, how he listened patiently to stories she would never have known. It struck her that there was a quiet confidence in him, one that came not from status or wealth, but from experience and authenticity. She realized that she admired him, not in the way people admired success, but in the way one admired someone who was grounded, kind, and strong in a way that mattered in real life, not just on paper. At one point, her ex approached them, a polite but hesitant smile on his face. "I didn't expect to see you here," he said. "I didn't either," she replied evenly, "but I'm glad I came." Her ex glanced at him and then back at her. "And this is my friend," she said simply, introducing him. He nodded politely. The ex's expression flickered again, a mixture of surprise and something unspoken. She noticed but did not react. It wasn't about him anymore. It was about her. As the night went on, she found herself talking to him more than anyone else. They shared quiet conversations away from the crowd, exchanging thoughts on life, work, and dreams. She learned more about his daughter, how he balanced work with parenting, and the small victories and challenges of raising a child on his own. She shared bits of her life too, her career, the sacrifices she had made, the loneliness she sometimes felt at the top. What surprised her most was how easy it felt to talk to him. There was no judgment, no need to impress, no expectation to explain or justify her choices. It was the first time in years that she felt truly understood, not for her achievements but for who she was beneath them. He, too, seemed to relax in her presence. She was not overwhelming. She did not demand attention. She listened as much as she spoke. There was a mutual respect that grew quietly throughout the evening, like a gentle undercurrent beneath the surface of the wedding festivities. At one point, the DJ announced a slow dance. Couples paired off, moving gracefully to the music. She hesitated, unsure. He extended his hand without words, an invitation rather than a command. She placed her hand in his. They moved together, not perfectly, but in sync enough to feel comfortable. As they swayed, she felt the tension in her shoulders ease. She realized that for the first time in a long while she was not performing. She was simply present. The world outside, the judgment, the gossip, the past, mattered less. What mattered was this simple, real connection between two people who had chosen to be there, not out of obligation, but out of choice. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of laughter, small talk, and shared moments. She noticed how he watched over her subtly, checking that she was comfortable, that no one was making her uneasy. She realized that the role of a fake boyfriend had already shifted. It was no longer about pretending for appearances. It was about support, presence, and honesty. As the night drew to a close, the bride and groom shared their final dance. Guests began to leave, hugs and farewells exchanged. She felt a strange mixture of relief and disappointment that the day was ending. Relief because she had survived the emotional minefield of the wedding. Disappointment because the moments of connection she had shared with him were over, for now. Outside, under the night sky, they walked to the car together. The city lights reflected in puddles from a recent rain and the air was crisp. She turned to him. "Thank you," she said softly. "Not just for today, but for everything." He smiled, a gentle, understanding smile. "You didn't need a fake boyfriend. You just needed someone to stand with you, and I'm glad I could do that." They reached her car. She paused, unsure of what to say next. There was a moment of silence, comfortable and unforced. "This is where it ends," he said, finally breaking the silence. "Back to our lives tomorrow." "Yes," she agreed, though she felt a little wistful. "But it was more than I expected." He nodded. "It often is when you're honest and brave enough to ask for help." They parted with a polite hug, one that carried respect and gratitude rather than obligation. As she watched him drive away, she realized something important. Today had been about more than a wedding or a fake role. It had been about choice, presence, and trust. And in that quiet understanding, something had shifted inside her. For the first time in months, she felt lighter. Not because the past had disappeared, but because she had faced it honestly, with someone who respected her for who she was, not for what she had achieved or what others thought of her. And for him, the day had been equally revealing. He realized that helping someone, even in a simple, small way, could create a bond that felt real. A connection that was honest, respectful, and grounding. He had come as a favor, but he was leaving with a memory of mutual trust and a glimpse of something deeper, something he had not expected to find in a stranger. As the city slept and the wedding lights dimmed, both of them went home with more than just a story. They carried with them a sense of understanding, of quiet companionship, and the knowledge that sometimes the simplest acts, standing beside someone, listening, being present, can change a day and even a life more than they ever imagined. The day after the wedding, life returned to its normal rhythm. She woke up early as usual, the city already humming outside her apartment window. The first thing she noticed was a strange emptiness. The wedding, the faux role, the shared moments with him, Suddenly, they were gone. She had thought she would feel relief, but instead there was a quiet weight pressing in her chest. Her phone buzzed on the bedside table. A message. She picked it up. It was him. "Good morning, coffee today?" Her heart skipped. She paused before replying. She could have said no, returned to her carefully structured routine, and pretended the day before had been nothing more than a fleeting encounter. But something in her told her to say yes. "Sure," she typed. "Same cafe. Perfect," came the reply almost instantly. She showered, dressed casually but neatly, and left her apartment with a nervous excitement she hadn't felt in years. The cafe was quiet that morning, the sun casting gentle light across the tables. He was already there, seated at their usual corner, a small cup of coffee in front of him. His calm presence made her feel less like she was walking into the unknown and more like she was entering a safe space. "Morning," he said, smiling. "Morning," she replied. For a moment neither spoke. The comfort of silence felt strange. It wasn't awkward, it was real. "So," he began, "how are you feeling after yesterday?" She took a slow sip of her coffee. "Better, actually, and strangely lighter. I didn't expect that." "Good," he said. "That's all I hoped for. I just wanted to help you feel steady. Not judged, not alone." She looked at him, noticing again the simple strength in his demeanor. There was no need to impress, no need to over-explain. Everything about him suggested honesty. She found herself relaxing, letting her guard slip just a little. They talked quietly for a while. He shared a few stories about his daughter, small, funny incidents that made him smile, moments of joy in everyday life. She shared stories from her company, moments she was proud of, and also small failures she rarely admitted to anyone. She laughed more freely than she had in months. "Why are you laughing so easily?" he asked at one point, teasing but gentle. "I don't know," she admitted. "I guess I haven't felt this normal in a long time." "Good," he said softly. "You deserve it." Time passed quickly. Hours felt like minutes. They realized that being together, even in such a casual way, brought a sense of balance neither had expected. There were no demands, no pretense, just simple connection. Over the next few days, their meetings became a small routine. They would meet for coffee, occasionally lunch, sometimes just a walk in the park. She was careful not to overthink it, reminding herself that this was about a friendship, a shared understanding, nothing more. But she could feel herself drawn to him, the way he noticed small details, the way he listened without judgment, the way he treated his daughter with patience and care. He, too, was careful. His life was structured, and he could not risk creating complications for himself or his child. But he found that talking to her was easy, a break from the constant responsibilities of his life. There was something about her honesty and quiet strength that made him want to be present, even beyond the obligations of a simple favor. One evening, they met at the cafe just before sunset. The city lights began to glow softly, and the air was filled with the scent of fresh coffee and pastries. She noticed he looked tired, his shoulders slightly hunched from a long day at work. "You okay?" she asked, concerned. "Yeah," he said with a tired smile. "Just a long day." "But seeing you here makes it better," she smiled. "You know, I didn't expect to feel this calm after all of this." "What do you mean?" he asked. "After the wedding, after everything," she said, pausing. "I thought I would feel more unsettled. But being with you, even for a little while, made me feel like I could breathe again. Like someone actually sees me, not the CEO, not the woman who had a breakup, just me." He looked at her, and for a moment there was no teasing, no humor, just understanding. "That's exactly what I felt too," he admitted. "You're not asking me to be someone I'm not, and I appreciate that. You don't make me feel like I have to perform or impress." Their conversation continued, moving effortlessly from small talk to more personal matters. They shared childhood memories, hopes for the future, and reflections on life's unpredictability. She realized that for the first time in years, she wasn't hiding behind her achievements or her carefully constructed image. She was simply herself, and he accepted that without question. Over the next few weeks, their bond grew quietly. They spent time together, always respecting boundaries, always honest. Her ex's wedding became a distant memory, replaced by the simple, real moments they shared. She began to notice small changes in herself. She smiled more freely, felt less pressure to always appear perfect, and started enjoying life in ways she had forgotten. He noticed changes too. He found himself looking forward to their meetings, thinking about her even when he was busy with work or parenting. He realized that the simple act of being present for someone else, even in a small way, could create a connection that felt real, grounding, and unexpectedly powerful. One afternoon, while walking through a quiet park, they sat on a bench and watched children play nearby. The air was filled with the gentle sounds of laughter and distant traffic. She turned to him, a thoughtful expression on her face. "You know," she said slowly, "I never expected to find this comfort with someone I barely knew. It feels strange, but also right." He nodded. "I understand. I felt the same way. There's something about honesty and simplicity that makes everything clearer. No games, no pretense, just connection." They sat in silence for a moment, watching the world go by. She felt a warmth spread through her, a quiet happiness that she hadn't realized she had been missing. He seemed to feel it too, the shared understanding that they had stumbled into something meaningful without planning it, without expecting it. Days turned into weeks. They continued to meet, gradually building trust and familiarity. Her work remained demanding, and his life with his daughter continued to be busy and structured. Yet within these small pockets of time together, they discovered a balance, a friendship that was honest, supportive, and increasingly important. One evening, as they shared a quiet dinner at a small, unassuming restaurant, she realized that what had started as a simple favor, a fake boyfriend for a day, had grown into something much deeper. Not romantic declarations or grand gestures, but mutual respect, understanding, and companionship. She looked at him across the table, noticing the subtle ways he listened, the small kindnesses he offered, and the quiet strength he carried. "You've changed how I see things," she said softly. He smiled modestly. "And you've reminded me that it's okay to let someone in, even just a little." They left the restaurant together, walking through the quiet streets. The night air was cool and fresh, filled with the distant sounds of the city. She felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. For the first time, she realized that life was not just about achievement or appearances. It was about connection, understanding, and being present with someone who saw you for who you truly were. As they reached the cafe where they had first met, they paused. Neither spoke immediately. The silence was comfortable, filled with the unspoken acknowledgement of what had grown between them. "Tomorrow," he said finally, "we go back to our routines, work, life, responsibilities." "Yes," she agreed. "But this doesn't have to end, does it?" He shook his head. "No. We can keep choosing to be present for each other. That's enough." She smiled, feeling the truth of his words. It was not about grand promises or instant solutions. It was about choice, respect, and honesty. And sometimes that was more than enough to change a life. In the weeks that followed, their connection continued to grow, quietly and steadily. They discovered that real relationships did not need to be rushed or forced. They thrived on understanding, patience, and the willingness to be themselves, fully and honestly. For her, life felt fuller. She laughed more, worried less, and allowed herself to experience moments of joy without calculating their value or appearance. For him, life felt lighter. He discovered that helping someone, even in a small, honest way, could bring a sense of fulfillment and companionship he had not known he was missing. Together, they were learning that real connections were not about pretending, performing, or impressing. They were about presence, trust, and the courage to share small moments honestly. And in that realization, they both found a sense of peace and hope that neither had expected when a simple request for a fake boyfriend first brought them together. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks gradually became months. Life continued its usual rhythm for both of them, yet something had shifted. What had started as a simple, one-day arrangement, the fake boyfriend at her ex's wedding, had quietly grown into something neither had expected. They met when they could, shared moments that were honest and uncomplicated, and discovered a connection that was steadily deepening. For her, it was a revelation. She had always defined herself by her work, her accomplishments, and the image of being in control. Love and personal relationships had always felt secondary, fragile, or too complicated to pursue. But now, she realized that connection was not about grand gestures or impressive displays. It was about presence, understanding, and the courage to let someone see her as she truly was. One Sunday morning, she woke up to a message from him. "Want to take a walk in the park today? My daughter is making her famous pancake breakfast. She insists you try it." She smiled. It was casual, friendly, and unassuming, yet the invitation carried something deeper, a welcome into a small, private world that he cared about and valued. She replied immediately, "I'd love to." When she arrived at his home, she was greeted by the bright, cheerful laughter of his daughter. The small apartment smelled of pancakes and syrup, warm and inviting. He stood in the kitchen, flipping pancakes and smiling. "Hey," he said softly, "you're right on time." She smiled back, feeling a lightness in her chest. "Smells amazing. You have to try one," he said, handing her a plate. She insists it's the best pancake you'll ever eat. As they sat down to eat, she noticed the ease between them. There was no pretense, no expectation. Just laughter, small talk, and the kind of simple joy that comes from being seen and accepted. His daughter chattered happily, asking questions, telling stories, and occasionally directing the conversation toward him and her. She listened, genuinely interested, and found herself laughing freely. After breakfast, they went for a walk in the nearby park. The air was crisp, filled with the sound of birds and the gentle rustle of leaves. They walked side by side, sharing stories and small reflections about life. She realized that she could be herself, imperfect, honest, and vulnerable, without fear of judgment. "You know," she said, looking down at her shoes as they walked, "I never imagined that what started as a fake role could become this, something real, meaningful, and unexpectedly important." He glanced at her, his eyes soft. "Neither did I." But sometimes, the simplest choices, being present, being honest, can create the strongest connections. She nodded, feeling the truth of his words. It wasn't about rushing, about grand declarations, or trying to fix the past. It was about being fully present in the moment, choosing to care and respecting each other's lives. Over the next few months, their routine became a comforting rhythm. They met for coffee, shared meals, and occasionally spent time with his daughter. She began to understand the world he had built, careful, structured, and filled with love for his child. And he began to see her not just as a successful CEO, but as a person with dreams, fears, and a capacity for kindness and connection that went beyond work. One evening, after a long day at the office, she received a message from him. "Want to join us for dinner tonight? My daughter made her famous spaghetti. She insists you try it." She smiled. "I'll be there in 30 minutes." When she arrived, the apartment was filled with warmth and laughter. His daughter ran to hug her, and she felt a wave of affection she hadn't realized she missed in her life. Dinner was filled with small jokes, stories, and the easy comfort of shared time. She noticed how he moved through the space, attentive, kind, patient, and present. She realized that this was the life she had been missing, the real connections that mattered more than status or recognition. As the evening drew to a close, they sat together on the couch, watching a quiet movie. She leaned back, feeling the day's tension melt away. "You know," she said softly, "I never thought I'd say this, but I feel at home here, with you." He looked at her, his expression calm but full of meaning. "I feel the same. It's not about the past or what others think. It's about being honest, being present, and caring for each other. That's what makes this real." She smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest she hadn't known for years. For the first time, she understood that love and connection did not have to be complicated or dramatic. They could be simple, honest, and quietly powerful. The next few weeks brought more shared moments, small adventures, and deeper understanding. They learned each other's habits, likes, and dislikes. She discovered his love for small, quiet moments, like reading stories to his daughter or walking through the park at sunset. He discovered her need for balance, her occasional moments of vulnerability, and her desire for companionship that was honest and unforced. One evening, after a long day at work, she arrived at his home to find him sitting on the couch, his daughter already asleep upstairs. He looked up and smiled. "Long day?" she asked. "The longest," he admitted, "but it's better now that you're here." She sat beside him, feeling the quiet comfort of being with someone who understood her without words. They talked about the day, their thoughts, and small dreams for the future. She realized that she no longer felt the weight of proving herself to anyone. She had someone who saw her for who she truly was, and that was enough. Weeks turned into months, and their connection continued to grow. They supported each other, shared life's ups and downs, and built a friendship that was strong, respectful, and increasingly meaningful. She learned to slow down, to value small moments, and to allow herself to feel without fear. He learned to trust again, to open his heart gradually, and to appreciate the beauty of connection without pressure or expectation. One day, as they sat in the park, watching the leaves fall gently from the trees, she turned to him. "I never expected this," she said. "That a single favor, a simple day at a wedding could change so much. Not just in my life, but in the way I see things and in the way I feel." He smiled, reaching for her hand. "Life has a way of surprising us," he said. "When we're honest, present, and willing to care, things that seem small can become the most meaningful." She squeezed his hand, feeling a sense of peace she had not known in years. She realized that the past, her ex, the heartbreak, the loneliness, no longer held power over her. She had chosen something new, something real, and she was not afraid. Over time, their relationship evolved naturally. It was not a fairy tale with grand declarations or dramatic gestures. It was steady, quiet, and deeply rooted in respect, trust, and understanding. They shared laughter, supported each other during difficult moments, and celebrated life's small victories together. One evening, after a particularly busy week, they sat together on the balcony of her apartment, looking out over the city lights. She leaned against him, feeling the calm of his presence. "You know," she said softly, "I never thought I could feel this happy, this at peace." "Because we built it together," he said, "step by step, moment by moment. Not by pretending, not by rushing, but by choosing each other honestly." She smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. She realized that this was what she had been missing all along: connection, presence, and the courage to let someone into her life. He looked at her, eyes full of quiet affection. "I didn't expect it either," he admitted. "A wedding, a favor, it turned into something real. Something worth holding on to." She nodded, understanding completely. "Yes, and we'll keep choosing it, every day if we want to." He smiled, and in that moment the past felt distant, irrelevant, and powerless. What mattered was the present, the honesty, and the choice to build something real together. For her, life had changed. She no longer felt defined by her work, her achievements, or the expectations of others. She had found a companion who valued her for who she truly was, and that made all the difference. For him, life had also changed. He had opened his heart again, discovered trust and companionship, and realized that even a small, honest act could lead to something deeply meaningful. Together, they discovered that love and connection did not need to be dramatic, forced, or perfect. It was steady, respectful, and honest. It was built on trust, presence, and the simple choice to be there for each other. And in that quiet, steady way, they found something neither had expected: A real, lasting bond built not on appearances, but on honesty, care, and shared life. It had all started with a single request for a fake boyfriend, and yet it had grown into the most real and meaningful part of their lives, a connection that neither would ever take for granted.